in terms of being masters of your own destiny, how much will you be the master of that destiny, and how much will you be implementing policy from Brussels?
Well, that's a good point. So statutorily, we are set up by a UK instrument, so that's what defines our core objectives. But increasingly, the policy interventions will be coming from Brussels. So there's a strong desire that for the creation of the single EU market, we move forward from directives which have fairly flexible interpretation in different countries to regulations which are absolute requirements. So, yeah, that's the reality of life, that as long as we're part of the EU, that becomes a driver of the policy that we then implement.
And of course, we're talking wholesale now, but this will increasingly be in the retail space too, right?
Yeah, our honest experience is that we're probably quite a way ahead of most other European countries in terms of thinking about retail conduct, the retail space. The RDR that we're introducing at the end of this year, much of that has been picked up in MiFID. Our own mortgage market review, which we'll be announcing shortly, much of that will feed into the EU's own thinking on mortgage policy. So I think it's fair to say that we are ahead in many respects, but that will change, and much of the current thinking at the European level is how the retail space is reflected in regulations.
When we last spoke, it was a fun part of the discussion when I said to you, when I asked you if this is the hardest job you've ever had, you said yes, it is. I imagine it's getting harder. Is part of that the encroachment from Brussels?
I think the agenda that we're all dealing with, and it's a huge agenda, so we're dealing with an agenda which is in part driven by Brussels, in part driven by Dodd-Frank in the US, in part driven by the sort of huge range of regulatory change that is being generated from every part of the industry, whether it's IOSCO or the Financial Services Board. And on top of that, we are uncovering, unfortunately, many issues that predate this period. So our work recently on interest rate swaps, some of the areas in PPI, go back a few years, but we're having to deal with them. So we've got that agenda to deal with, and we've got this change agenda of designing a new structure. So that's a lot to be dealing with at one time. And then, of course, more recently, LIBOR was something that hadn't been quite so prominent on our horizon, but has taken up a huge amount of time.